You are listening to Bootstrap Farmer Radio.
Hey everybody, I'm here with Mefferd, who I will tell you, this is farm podcasting is just like farming. Sometimes you get kinks. We spent a lot of time and expense going up to her farm, and she hosted us along with Andrew, and we recorded 4 hours of podcast, all which we can't use because of the audio. So thank you very much for joining me again and having another conversation. So it's I really so. And you and Andrew own Growing for Market magazine, and you guys have also gone to the farmers markets for many years, and currently you have a propagation business. If you don't mind, kind of introduce yourself and then walk us through what the last few years of farming has been like for you and Andrew.
Sure. Like many farming couples, Andrew and I met apprenticing on a farm in Pennsylvania, and both realized that we were bit by the farming bug and ended up apprenticing all over the country for a number of years and got to see many different operations and enterprises and learn new skills. And we began choosing farms based on what skills we wanted to acquire. And we took all of those ideas and combined them into our own farm, which we started in Pennsylvania. After farming there for a little while, we moved our farm to Maine. And we started off as an extremely diversified small farm, produce, sheep, lamb, pork, laying hens, produce, of course. We became interested in protected culture and started doing 4-season growing when we got to Maine. And that went well. We marketed to a variety of marketing channels. So when we were farming in Pennsylvania, we sold at one farmer's market in Washington, D.C., and that could absorb everything. When we moved to Maine, we ended up expanding into CSA and wholesale and institutions and other people's farm stands and other farmers, CSAs, and more farmers markets, et cetera, to try and move all the produce that we were producing. And while that was successful and we were growing and opening up new acreage every year and bringing on new clientele, we had the opportunity to purchase Growing for Market magazine. And I also had more of my own human livestock. So we really took, I had been starting to use QuickBooks about 10 years ago, and that helped us take a fine-tooth comb to what it was that we wanted to do and what was worth doing. And we couldn't do it all, so we pared down quite a bit. And once we purchased the magazine, what stood out to me was seedlings. It's something I love to do. It's early in the season. It gets you out there. I can be at home in the summers with my kids. And so currently we're a propagation business and a magazine.
So whenever people think about farming, oftentimes it's not going business to business, farmer to farmer. What type of market opportunities are out there, and why would one farmer choose not to do their own seedlings or transplants?
Sure. Growing for other farms is a lot of fun. And what other farms, I think, are looking for, one is space, and two is their own cost effectiveness. So instead of turning on a 30 by 90 in April or even February for onions, they often want early season space so they can turn on their greenhouses later and just start their whole seedling operation later, and their employees coming on later. So they need space and cost savings in their own greenhouses. They also may be more set up for one family of crops versus another. We have certain kinds of germination chambers, et cetera, that get slow germinating things up quickly, and maybe they haven't invested in that yet. And a concerted staff to taking care of seedlings, whereas their spring, maybe a couple of springs they're putting up hoop houses or focused elsewhere, or they're opening up new land, and it allows them to focus on other aspects of the farm while we're taking care of their plants.
I think there's an opportunity to also capitalize on, and I didn't know this going into it, but one thing that I learned from Johnny's extensive library and reference material is different seeds, of course, pop and germinate at different temperatures and under different conditions. If you're going to specialize in one versus the other, and especially if you're not doing your own and they're coming to somebody like you, is that a service that you could additionally offer? Hey, we can do peppers because we have heat mats or something like that.
Absolutely. We've got a variety of ways that we germinate plants, germ chambers, heat mats, etc. We also do artichokes for folks, and so we know how to vernalize seedlings, and that's something that either maybe they're not experienced with or don't want to fuss with. So we will start flats of artichokes, get them up early, stick them somewhere cold for an appropriate amount of time, and wake them back up for a good crop of artichokes. Definitely. We've figured out systems for different crop families that maybe the farms haven't invested in yet.
And I guess that's applicable to grafting tomatoes and things like that.
Yep, for a while, although I have to, the seedlings are my baby, but Andrew is the resident grafter. So as you know, he's been penning a couple of books here in the last couple of years. So normally we have offered grafted seedlings as a service in the past. In the past couple of years, he's been busy getting manuscripts in. So I hope to get that back online. But I see more and more folks who are good at grafting offering that as a service, because that's tricky and that takes very specialized healing chambers and somebody who can pay close attention. So grafted plants are a great seedling business. Yes.
If we look at the other side of the opportunity for you as the farmer and the business owner, time-wise, you're not having to do this year-round, and it can kind of go on your schedule. And the talk that we had before, you can bring people in, knock it all out, and you still have time to do a lot of other activities that you enjoy, want, and need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing with growing for other farms in particular, farms grow things all, especially servicing 4-season farms. Some farms need seedlings, various types of years. So if you want to use seedling propagation as a business on your farm, there is the opportunity to fit that into wherever is the lightest on your calendar year, whether you're growing for folks who need fall crops or you're growing really early season flower starts for other farms, or flushes of summer stuff, or if you're doing that, a lot of folks have trouble with spinach and the day length and getting that up, and you could be doing, people's high tunnel crops. So yes, it is amenable to shifting it around the calendar as suits your production ability, your own time frame.
And of course, you guys come from a very extensive growing background, but if somebody was interested in farming and wanted to dip their toes in it without a huge expenditure on a smaller footprint, would this be something that a beginning farmer could at least try out, as far as, just banging around a small high tunnel, minimum tools, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. In fact, that's how we started, and most farms that I know that sell seedlings started this way. So there's kind of 2 ways I would see experimenting with it. One is if you're already growing a bunch of crops for your own farm, exploring with seeding a certain amount extra of certain popular varieties and offering that at a farm stand or a roadside stand, or farmer's market. So figuring out if you're good at growing seedlings, growing a little bit more, marketing that and selling that as a crop because you're already doing it in your hoop house. We started with I don't know what it was, a 10 by 12. It was like Schedule 40 PVC over some rebar nailed into the ground. It doesn't take much. A little bit of protection is all that it takes, all the way up to fancier heated stuff. But a lot with a little as far as seedlings go. Even if you have a really good light cart and whatnot, you can sell some pretty decent plants. So the infrastructure is minimal for the basic crops, and it fits into your own seeding schedule if you are a produce farm. The other way of starting is, it's a whole other separate venture. Say you're not a produce farm, you're a livestock farm, and you want to do something early in the spring. Again, it's the minimal infrastructure, just playing around with what it takes to get crops looking good.
And it seems like it's infinitely scalable. Like the people I buy my transplants from, they've got around 230 by 96 high tunnels. I mean, it's a big operation. And then the people I get my plug from, it's 10 acres of grass in Canada. So and I'm buying flats of like 288 kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like you said, a 10 by 20 PVC deal all the way up to 10 acres under one, roof.
That's right. And it's about the way you market yourself. We're small. We have a 20 by 50 and two 30 by 50s, two of those, and then a 12 by 20. And that's what our seedlings are done in. So we're small scale. So we're not going to do the high volume of 6-packs, et cetera. So seedlings are very easy to do an enterprise budget on. There's finite input and a finite amount of time that they're under your care. It's not like managing a long season Brussels sprout where you may or may not have to weed more and like tracking labor hours, and you're weeding that along with your cabbage, and how do you account for the labor that goes just into the Brussels? With seedlings, you have pot, seed, soil, labor, water, heat. And yeah, so you can scale that up, price your product. It's very easy to find a price point for your product based on that. And yeah, so as you scale up, then if your your unit cost, then it's easy to say, okay, I want to scale up, but if I scale up, maybe I want to invest in that bale buster, the soil mixer, or a conveyor belt to help the production line, or, starting to look at some of that equipment that the larger nurseries use to get efficiency of production. It's easy to run those numbers.
And even you mentioned just small things like moving the dirt to the trays versus moving trays of dirt from one end to the other made a huge difference in your scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm constantly crunching the numbers is not my bailiwick, but it's something I'm fascinated by. And I realized that the job I like doing the least also was the one that was most efficient, which I think is why I was frustrated by it. And yeah, so we figured out, a lot of farms are limited by their infrastructure, whether you have cement floor in your nursery or not, or those kinds of things. And we figured out that it's easier to move all the filled trays. It's easier to fill the trays in one building and move them out and pot them up in the nursery than it is to pot them up where you fill them and then move live plants to the nursery. Because I was looking into investing in rolling carts, but we have to go down a hill, and so could I fashion some brakes on them? Or yeah, but
I've seen the snow you guys get, so I imagine.
Yeah, there's that too. So yeah, but it was easy to spot those inefficiencies because we can track the unit cost and the labor involved, and yeah, go from there. And it was an easy fix.
Are the financials something, and I'm jumping ahead here, but are the financials something that you look at year to year, or because you're doing the same thing over and over again, you kind of have it down?
I'm looking at them sometimes week to week, depending on as pre-orders. So we have 3 marketing channels right now. We have our pre-order folks. I list the available plants in January, and folks spend the winter ordering from my online store. I assemble them and they come pick them up during one 10-day stretch. Then I also do farmers markets, and I also allow customers to come to the farm and buy retail. And so as those orders are coming in, I'm tracking, how does that compare to this week last year? Do I need to do it? Do I need to spend the money on a Facebook boost, to try and get the word out more about so I'm tracking it then. And then during the season, I'm comparing, how did this farmers market week do to the same, compare to the same week last week again, so I can figure out my plants are really flying off the shelf. Maybe I won't have that sale, that sometimes I have on trying to move the last few seedlings out. And with something like QuickBooks, which is the platform that I've chosen, it's very easy to run year over year reports for a certain time date, a certain week. Yeah. So that's just a push of the button to compare. And then certainly at the end of the year, we'll do an overall analysis on our income and expenses, and did we hit the mark?
Can you give us a kind of an overview of your weekly schedule? How much time are you guys putting in? What, do you have employees?
Yep.
Just kind of like day-to-day stuff.
Sure. That's another thing I love about seedlings. It's especially at our scale, it's not something that I'm busting out 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. It starts slow and ramps up. So I start the first, I do it all the first month or so of the season. I'm just every Monday I'll seed some more stuff. We have a spreadsheet that tells me when it goes. So on Mondays we do seedings. And then we hit this week where there's more than I can do on a Monday. And I really don't want to run over into Tuesday because I'm still going to plays at my kids' school and that kind of thing. So then I'll bring on somebody to just come keep me company and help me seed. So it starts with somebody on Mondays, and then that grows to Mondays and Wednesdays. And then when things start needing potting up, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then eventually we start the market season and open up for retail and have somebody here Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. But before you know it, it's Memorial Day and that's it. So it's amazing because I've been able to schedule my own time and my employees' time, because again, seedlings are very finite. The day you need to start it based on how big you want it when you sell it. And so you can work backwards from your sell date and plan your week. So right now we have folks, half days, 3 days a week. And the rest of the days I putz around and do pest scouting and disease control and finish up stuff that didn't get done and generally care for them. So yeah, you can schedule it really well.
One thing that you mentioned when we were up there that I thought was interesting is I asked about overhead or automatic irrigation, and you had talked about you have to hand water because certain parts of the trays dry out quicker than others.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we try and use as many plantable pots as we can. So the cow pots, the fertile pots, and the peat pots. But for 6-packs, we found that the plastic 6-packs still work well for us. And depending on the variety of plant, they're all different sizes. So we try and group things in the nursery based on plant family, but also based on pot size, so that watering is more efficient. And the plantable pots, of course, are going to dry out much faster than the plastic 6-packs. So we need to really keep an eye on that. And within a tray of 15 cow pots, the ones on the edge dry out faster because they're exposed to air than the ones in the middle. And we find just much higher quality, fewer fungus gnats, all that kind of stuff if we can really keep a close eye on watering. And we're still of the scale where that is, even at the height of the season, it's an hour, in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. And the overhead irrigation, while some days I wish I could just walk in and have my plants have been watered or flip a switch, we also have things. We turn our nursery on April 4th, and we don't have a frost-free line out to our nursery. We put in all of our frost-free hydrants before we built the hoop houses where they needed to be. So we're still hoses and above ground lines. So it also doesn't work for a pretty good portion of our season. So I feel like our quality is better with the human attention, and we really wouldn't use it that long anyway.
Well, and not to get overly romantic about it, because often I'm not, but I do still to this day enjoy hand watering the high tunnel. Even a 30 by 96 doesn't take forever, but that slowing down and paying attention, I really think helps all of the plants.
Well, yeah, I think I mentioned this last time. The quote that just always sticks in my head when I think about a farmer paying attention is, the best fertilizer is the farmer's footsteps. It's attention to detail. And that pays off a lot with seedlings. I'll notice day-to-day changes among the health of the plants in the hoop house. And if I weren't hand watering, I would have to make a diligent schedule to stick to do basically the same thing and look at every plant and every tray.
Yeah. The market potential, again, is very interesting because it's business to business, but there's also direct to consumer lines where, just like you guys with multiple sales outlets, you're going to the farmers markets. Like we have an email and delivery list that we've hit up before. Even with the salads that we deliver, we've hit them up with nursery stock, and it's been very well received. The example that we gave on Wednesday was my garden's growing for my landscaping for floriculture, because we use like a lot of annual bedding plants. Do you guys do any flowers or bedding plants, or can you speak on that a bit?
We started selling seedlings mainly as an extension of stuff we were already growing. So that was vegetables primarily. And then when we started selling for retail, we added way more varieties of stuff we've had over the years that we love. And just this year, actually, I added flowers, and that's been extremely well received. And I imagine we will take that and run next year. And the only problem is now we're bursting at the seams and we need more greenhouses. Like, so yeah, I think start with what you know and what you're good at. And absolutely, it's not a big risk to start a few flats of something. You know, that's another thing is the unit cost of a couple of flats of seedlings is not going to make or break a business. So it's a fun one to be in because experimentation is not risky, like putting in a whole crop in a quarter acre. You spend the whole season taking care of it. Is anyone going to buy it? You know, it's a really great enterprise to take risk and try new things.
We talk a lot about risk tolerance and some of the things we talk about. And I like what you just said there, because it sounds like you can take a portion and play around with it and experiment and see what the market's going to bear depending on the channel. But then you also said that most of your clients are telling you what they want.
Yeah, so that's another neat thing about growing for other farms. Some of them order straight from our list of varieties, but most of the growers we grow for, they know what works for them, they know what their customers want, and we have two options. They'll send us their list and they'll send us the seed, or they'll send us the list and we will secure the seed, you know, for the added cost of seed and shipping. So that makes it easy on us too. They just hand us the order and we're off and running.
The clients, for those of us that are going to the farmers markets, like the more clients, the better. But for this, it seems like you would have to deal with less clients, which means less communication, less headache to achieve the same sales goals.
Yeah, there are added logistics for sure. Because if you have however many farms and every one of them has a different specific varieties they're growing, you need really good tracking, and you've got to make a new seeding calendar every year with the appropriate varieties. You may come across varieties that you're not familiar with that you need to learn in a hurry, as far as how far out you need to see them before they're going to be ready. But that's the part I like. That little bit of challenge is it's not so far outside what I'm normally growing that I'm not willing to give it a shot, and usually, you know, guess pretty correctly. So yeah, it's fewer clients, but it's clients that really need attention to detail and to get what they ordered. You know, you don't want to, you know, you've got their broccoli crop in your hands. So yeah, I would say attention to detail is a advantageous personality trait for doing myriad varieties of plants.
It's something to keep in mind, as these people are relying on you for their future income. So
right.
It's pretty serious.
Yeah. So, but I like it. I'm up for it, you know, and I just had a farmer picking up today, and, you know, there was a minor issue and we resolved it, and they're just overall so appreciative that they know that they've saved themselves weeks of labor and care, that, you know, farmers are a cool crop. So that, not to say that, you know, they're just a really good group of people to work with and are understanding, but I think they also appreciate the fact that I understand what is in my hands. And so conversely, for, you know, there's growing for farms, which is like that. And that's why there's a little bit of freedom in growing for retail, because you're basically just presenting whatever did well that season. And there isn't as much, you know, certainty, you know, you can kind of do. But growing for pre-orders is kind of like growing for farmers, where these people order ahead and they pay in advance at least a portion of their order. And so there's that not pressure, but just obligation to get it right. And so you learn over time to build in room for mistakes. You know, if you seed the very last day you could possibly seed a pepper in the season, to come to fruition, that's not a great time to find out you have germination issues, or the seed was maybe a little less viable than you thought, or whatever. So
what is the marketing difference between marketing to other farmers at this scale versus going to the public? And I would think a lot of it would be language, because, you're talking to another farmer as a farmer. So there's that barrier that's reduced. But as far as getting the message out, what's that look like for you guys?
I mean, it's night and day. With farmers, you don't need anything. One farmer hears that you grow good plants, they tell another farm. I mean, I would say 100% of my farmer to farmer growing is word of mouth. Also, we've been in this community. Sustainable farming is a really small world. So chances are I kind of know them or have come across them at farming conferences and, fairs and whatnot. So we're a tight-knit group, and so word gets out. So that actually is an easier marketing. Now, saying that, if somebody says word of mouth to another farmer, this person's great, they're going to want some reference material. They're going to want to say, okay, I'll check them out, and go to some kind of website that looks like you're semi-responsible and love what you do. So I definitely think that's kind of a bare minimum, is that you do need a landing page or something for them to reference that touts what you do. For retail and pre-order, that is consumer psychology. It's, how do I tell my story? And, my story is my story. So maybe it's not for everybody, but you need a way to emphasize why would they come to my farm versus Home Depot? And so our story is, our living soil, our variety selection. There's no way you could find 100 varieties of tomatoes at most other garden nurseries. And so really it's thinking, okay, who's going to want that? Who's interested in that? And speaking their lingo and trying to get the word out there. So the marketing is very different, but as a baseline, you definitely need some kind of a landing page that tells your story.
If we were to briefly and just very generally look at the economics of this thing, the capital expense, where we're looking at utility infrastructure and running water, gas lines, building of the high tunnel, building of the shelving, and that kind of thing. How long would you recommend somebody, and this is all over the board, I understand that, but if you did start small, 30 by 60 or 12 by 50 or something like that, how long would you expect that to be amortized out before that capital expense should be paid off, where now you're just worried about the variable expenses of running your yearly operation and allowing a little bit for some repair and maintenance and film replacement, that kind of thing?
Well, we had the advantage of having a multi-enterprise farm, that also benefited from our infrastructure. But one of the best seedling growers I know in Ithaca, New York, just now put up her first kind of official metal structure green. I mean, she's been growing many, many, many seedlings for many years, and she has the greenest thumb. I mean, the rarest, hardest to grow stuff. She just loves it. And she's been working out of PVC hoops on rebar to some degree. So if you figure a stick of PVC is $5, and you need 20 of those, and then plastic is 200. But I mean, the basic infrastructure is not all that expensive. And I mean, really the price of your product is going to depend. It's going to be the factor of how fast that pays itself off. But one of the things I do to figure that out is you get your, you just want to know your gross margin. Like, what's your unit cost? What do you sell it for? So then, what's coming back to you. And then you can do a marketing chart and say, well, I think I might sell this many here, this many there, that many there. So say that was my lineup and I sold them all. How much income would that be? And then the percentage of that income that would be coming back into the farm from your gross margin. And like I said, the stuff that goes, so you'd have, the cost of your low cost hoop house and your electricity rate with the voltage of your heat mat, the cost of your soil, the cost of your seed, and then you just decide how much to pay yourself. So like I said, it's a quick sketch on a piece of paper to figure out how long it would take to pay back. And, you know, I try and do products that have at least a 70% gross margin, and I kind of run from there. So I can't give you an exact year because the variables differ, but you can design it. In other words, you can design it to pay off the infrastructure.
So aside from just a terrible act of God, natural disaster, you'd have to mess up pretty bad for this to go sideways.
Yeah, I mean, you'd either have no sales, like it just didn't work, or have to replace something big that broke. But basically you can build in a profit to a seedling and still be within marketable range. I mean, if you're doing it with any kind of efficiency, I would say if you judge your numbers, I wouldn't grow 10,000 seedlings your first year. You know, just if you're testing the waters, do a minimal amount. It would be a minimal investment, and grow from there. I think it can grow organically, quickly, and sensibly.
What's the hardest thing to grow that's just a must-have that you have to have at every market?
I don't know, Nick. We've gotten so good at growing everything.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the thing that causes me the most anxiety, I'll say that we grow it well, but the thing that causes me the most anxiety is the stuff that takes a long time. You know, your celery that needs to hang out a while before it germinates, your parsley, which you need dozens and dozens of flats of. I mean, parsley sells like hotcakes, and it takes the longest to germinate. And so you're like, should I reseed? You know, should I? And sometimes I have it pop up in 3 days and with like a nice dark area, and sometimes it takes longer. That and the really, really, really hot peppers, like I call them the Trinity, the 3 hottest peppers in the world. You know, you want to make sure those are up. And so yeah, herbs. I would say herbs. They're long, slow germinators, long, slow growers.
Yep.
But people love them.
Well, listen, thank you so much for reshooting this with us. It's a tremendous give back to the entire community and to us, and I thank you very much for taking the time.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm really excited to see this as a topic. I think it should be covered more. I always go to conferences hoping to find somebody talking about seedling sales or plug sales, or because I think it's a great venture and has a lot of room for creativity in marketing and product.
Well, it was a fun exercise for us because I have to buy so many transplants, and we did put the pencil to it, and it's going to be a great return for us, and something at the latest we can implement by next spring. And that's part of what I love what I do, is because I get to get out there, get exposed to things like this. And I remember 2 years ago when you and I first talked, whenever I came up to interview Andrew, I thought that was such a missed opportunity that I didn't interview you here for State of the Show as well. So I was glad we got to reconnect, and this is fun for me. And I'm eternally grateful to you and Andrew both. So thank you.
All right. You're very, very welcome. And keep us in the loop of how your project's going. I'd be interested to hear about what you learn along the way.
Will do. Well, you can follow Ann at One Drop Farm on social, and also at Growing for Market magazine, which has just been a tremendous must-have resource. And I imagine you had a hand in editing some of Andrew's books, I imagine, just like my wife has to edit my stuff too. So I'm going to go ahead and thank you for some of that for the group, for the Greenhouse and Hoop House Growers Handbook. So thank you guys so very much for everything you do and the give back that you give to everybody. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Nick.
We'll catch you later.
All right.